94. Our legal, military, political, environmental humanity rescues may moderately change as volatile circumstances do. So let's attack the big picture. Weapons will fast end our entire world unless we fast destroy weapons. You must Skype our treaty around the world and into national governments in a huge hurry. Governments buy with our money all those weapons in return for politician power-enhancing corporate bribery, also paid to look the other way while millions more murders are sold directly to hundreds of militias and drug cartels. Isn't that alone 100 times bigger reason than you need to outlaw in your treaty 100% of private gifts to politicians? Now shut down every weapons factory on Earth. Then destroy the 100 years more killing shit the perps could still hoard and blow up another 30 million with. Then quickly, directly exploding the nukes that set each other off like napalming a fireworks factory. Unless you just as fast get rid of them. Most of Gaza's millions have tiny, drafty, leaky tents, no more homes, no indoors from coming winter. For decades, Gaza's blankets, coats, food, water, medicine, and heaters mostly came in on UN trucks. This year, Israel banned the entire UN agency bringing all that in. Tens of thousands of truckloads of all that, plus medical supplies, the loving world has filled warehouses just outside Gaza with. But Israeli politicians have instructed their Israel Defense Force to overregulate to absolutely total blockade this fall's delivery into Gaza. Spokesmen place 100% of the 100% siege's causation responsibility on Hamas's refusal to totally surrender, disarm, and emerge for the handcuffs. A giant portion of the Netanyahu government has insisted for the entire 15-month assault that all of Gaza be siege-starved for the war's duration. Now they finally, fully cut off everything. History's longest, biggest siege, the world notices less and less as Gaza starves more and more. Hamas is reasonably enough accused of hanging on until 100,000 starved corpses horrify and enrage the world into somehow forcing Israel to back off while Hamas survives to someday fight again. They just as logically hide and fight on, believing their worst alternative to be torture to death in Israel's jails. Israel sees no reason to lose a few hundred soldiers dragging the enemy from tunnels when completed ethnic cleansing of 2.3 million innocents will finally net them the prize new settlement, bigger than their hundreds of previous land grabs put together. Their right-wing government has permanently ruled out any Palestinian self-government ever, and West Bank occupation is due to become full annexation, both intended to force decades more dictatorship, ensuring endless bloody revolution. No problem, just give us 10,000 more American bombs to hammer order. Their own plans, not my accusations. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Do I speak truth to power? Sure, while they laugh and agree. You can't stop us. What do my book and Barack Obama say? Yes, we can. Unless you don't help. Then, no, we can't. Only when we legally, economically, and physically dismantle their power do we build yours to save the world and your family. The Mideast War tragically features both opponents seizing evil. Hamas' slaughter of concert and kibbutzes, then 50 times bloodier Gaza genocide. Both wrongs each side claims makes their right. Muslim-hating revenge freak Donald Trump will send 5,000 more 2,000-pound bombs over 40 years to blast and starve hundreds of thousands more Gazans, while world ignorance and apathy, without your involvement, leaves the American weapon-fueled warriors 70 more years of apartheid over Palestinian human refuse. The singular American power dictator over the 195-nation UN will continue to veto any Gaza peacekeeping force to open border crossings and escort a year's 365,000 aid trucks past IDF soldiers, knowing better than to machine gun UN soldiers while armed, starving gangs choose generous handouts over bloody hijack attempts. Time then for our rescue movement. Absolutely no other solution in the offing. First, we must simply reason with Israel. An IDF that blasted 8,000 Hamas fighters dead in and out of their tunnels pathetically scurried away from starving armed gang aid truck hijackers mere minutes from several hundred trucks' border entries. All world, Israeli, and American law requires them to blow up not 10,000, not one bomb, near one civilian. Instead, they slaughtered 100,000. Equally genocidally criminal is refusing to aid your own war victims. UN, American, and Israeli power centers have refused to stop bombing, stop starving, and start feeding and otherwise helping the Palestinians. All the IDF had to do was to keep locating and guarding tunnel entries and exits until Hamas ran out of water and food. Search every house for weapons and trapdoors while feeding the families without leaving sneaky Hamas any surplus. 100 times the success, but 100th of the satisfaction of bombing and starving millions of civilian, but still devil Palestinians. Your movement only demands of abusers rule of law, common sense, and care, and humanity. How many on planet Earth are aware of and objecting to and acting against the murder of humanity that I keep describing? I write and speak because too few others do. But only you can save the world and your family. Stopping murder of human bodies, hearts, and souls, and booming equality and happiness absolutely requires more law. Any ultimate true democracy should reverse all law crafted by bigots to abuse minorities merely different, not evil or inferior, just members of races, religions, and nations that only arrogant, self-superior, bigoted fools believe are of the wrong skin colors, faiths, and flags. You must, with every good new law, stop all these subhumans from taking undue, unjust, evil power, which they will cement forever with propaganda to darken myriads of hearts and minds into supporting their wars against inferior scum. Your treaty will make laughably impotent all such evil lies with world education for universal love, respect, and equality. Fund and staff the adult, not just kids classes that prove every culture, religion, and race worthy and superior. I'm reading How Democracies Die by Levitsky and Ziblatt. They describe would-be tyrants twisting laws to make them actual dictators, with absolute power ever grown by absolute corruption and genocide everywhere. Evil power finally broken only by doomsday of all, or your universal love law reforms. All I can do is to keep stabbing your ears like a broken record. Have I ever spoken to you longer than 2 minutes without demanding your new laws to break evil powers fast, just before they break, then kill us all? I ask every American to request interviews with politicians who legislate for weapons and wars of invasion and against colored minority voting rights and human rights for women and transgenders. Preface your questions with, America's founders designed a great nation on specific principles and laws requiring only people's choice of peace or necessary defensive war. Their restriction of black slaves to only 60% representation was finally corrected by Civil War freeing of the slaves. Then women struggled to win voting rights. Politician, do you hate women, gays, people of color, transgenders, and the American military's foreign bombing victims so much that you must destroy all their rights? That you never stop demanding for your 100 times more equal selves? Are you going to finish murdering hallowed American democracy with single cult leader autocracy? Do not these thefts of human rights make you a traitor against our American democracy of all equals, all respected groups? Is not that constitutional, lawful love, not our mighty deadly bombs, in fact, the justification of your own claim to represent all equal citizens of the greatest nation and democracy on earth? Now, will my listeners from all nations confront your leaders with their unconstitutional law breaking, or in fact evil law making, that they continue to hurt weaker people with just to advantage the already overpowerful, rich, weaponized, and corrupt? Then ask each of your leaders one final question. The exact words of Army Counsel Joseph Welch to savage American persecutor Senator Joseph McCarthy. Have you no sense of decency, sir, at long last? Finally, appeal to your selfish, venal leader who represents only the right race and correct religion and those who scratch his or her back. Please help us all instead, like any true patriot would. And then your constituents and voters will try to help you live longer and to enhance your career. Be happy and obey our laws, to practice active love of all people, of all colors, faiths, genders, gender choosers, sexual preferences, and nationalities. Then, dear leaders, won't your days of kindness, care, respect, peace, and justice help you sleep at night? Sweet dreams, fellas. Yesterday, I talked history with a Palestinian acquaintance at our gym. He left his home in Bethlehem, now part of the West Bank, years ago to live in America. He now fears for his 82-year-old mother, whose entire neighborhood has been ordered to abandon their homes by the Israel Defense Force for one or another military objective reasons. Without much world publicity, Netanyahu's government escalates war against the West Bank's Palestinian Authority government. Falling American bombs now regularly land on private homes because potential enemies might be lurking nearby, justifying IDF murder from the skies of all those obviously complicit civilians. Without the world treaty law expansion I will detail, Israel will annex the two huge Palestinian enclaves, West Bank and Gaza, simply stealing all of their remaining homelands by force, including enforcement of military dictatorship with 500 to 2,000 pound American bombs. I commented that Jews surviving Hitler's gassing of 7 million of them fled to their Palestinian ancestral homeland, imbued with the passionate belief that millions of Arabs were millennia planted on lands that really belonged by some holy ancestral ancient historic right to the arriving Jews. So they brought enough weapons to move back in by force. All of Gaza's 2.3 million, said my friend George, are descended from refugees who were driven there from their original homes by invaders who believed that God had always reserved as forever Jewish homelands. Shockingly inhuman aggression from those barely escaping Hitler's killing fields. I don't tell this story to single out Jews as immoral conquerors. Thousands of war's historic purposes were abuse and murder of people living on land you want, so take it by force. The likely first war on farmers by starving hunters for bread morphed in its first bloody minutes to capture of their village and farmland with growing food on it. How few years passed before 100 farm communities were invaded by meat hunters suddenly become human-killing and conquering armies. His story was off to its 10,000-year, billion-slaughtering races, land being one of several other classic spoils, riches and political, true religion and master race powers. All the unlimited privileges of attacking bigots, quite certain that a world of evil inferiors should themselves deserve, own, and enjoy nothing, not even their loves, needs, spilling blood, or life itself. But again, I don't grieve over the history of war just to moralize about and condemn the bunch of inhuman sickos. Actually, I'm convinced that they'll act 1,000 times sweeter after we take away their every goddamn tool of abuse. Wars are usually actions for supremely ambitious, selfish purposes, often to drive owners off of land so you can steal it. All wars that invade to rob others of their rightful habitations and nations are unjust, in total contrast to homeland defenders fighting to stay alive and keep homes they paid for and grew up on, just wars of defense. How many wars did not feature invasion to steal homes or other cultural, economic structures on lands upon our earth with enough space for everyone to live and let live? As our treaty's purpose is to end all war, my little essay is ready to write its final tenet. Our new United Nations with true peacekeeping power, described by my speeches detailing enforceable disarmament and war-halting interventions, will make land grabbing a lot harder, but not impossible. Even in our almost weaponless utopia, a few thousand men making poor livings in one location could notice a small nearby nation where folks are economically strong on luscious land, but physically weak. All my joking about all those wars still to be fought with steak knives and chokeholds aside, disarmament will not 100% vanquish aggression and lust for land. Even if weapons to the moon once exploded those two human failings nearly to doomsday. Treaty tenet, most war being invasion, our 200-nation UN General Assembly will never stop surveilling Earth for the occurrence of assaults into territory rightfully others. Upon each plurality vote to stop it, stop it. From each nation's few percent of police available for international peacekeeping, send the men and women necessary to restore order and rightful ownership and occupation. By military force from the only remaining gun-toters in an otherwise demilitarized world? Of course not. That potential for new world dictatorship and tyranny boggles the mind. While guns, bombs, and even machetes keep diminishing by law everywhere, enforcement of human justice will become ever more powerful and successful, intervening with words ever stronger, force more minimal, announcing, "We're here to see that everyone has the homes, food, water, work, and peace they need without taking anyone else's, and God forbid, beating them up too." For ultimate, occasionally necessary authority, we peacekeepers bench press, squat, and slam protein shakes. When we need to grab a few arms and say, "Let's chill out, sit down, and work this out," then our mediation will get a grip, a strong grip. Like Arnold holding two fighters 5 feet apart by the hair while they punch air. Here's the January 2024 temporary potential good news from the Gaza war front. A ceasefire and hostage return deal was just announced. But in our out-of-control world of giant weapons and every stupidly legal and also illegal but still giant power to blow them, few ceasefires last. Told they would have to stop in 72 hours, the IDF blew 75 Palestinians to bloody shreds in 8 hours, mostly women and kids. The bombing halt plus prisoner exchange agreement was to be submitted to Netanyahu's cabinet today. But Bibi called off the meeting, claiming that Hamas reneged on the deal. Hamas denied this, swearing their 100% go-ahead. Actually, two of the Prime Minister's biggest war freak governing powers told him to scuttle the deal or they would end his rule. "Back to endless bombing and starving every Palestinian," they publicly shrieked. As my book goes to YouTube, 3 days of Gaza bombing pause and aid truck inflow continues as hostages for prisoners exchanges begin. But Hamas fighters have been spotted rolling around in pickups, and Bibi's war coalition only preserved his government by extracting his promise to blast the 6-week ceasefire to kingdom come with another year of bombing needed to drive all Gaza millions and remaining Hamas into the Sinai Desert. Trump says he's on board for the full carnage and triumph that our thousands more mighty bombs will hammer. Only you, no one else, can and must end this. Israel's commander-in-chief's other giant problems are his indictments for breach of trust, fraud, and accepting bribes. The minute the indispensable war general's horse passes midstream and surges onto the bank of peace and national safety, his conviction and jail clocks start ticking again. Well, who wouldn't murder 120,000 and scuttle 5 peace deals for years more to avoid prison food? Alternatively, Netanyahu could be in jail, and less likely his war on hold when you hear this. But my hours of fury against the war we pray ends soon make a larger point. Even while Israel wins with American genocide, while Hamas and its supplier Iran fade, Palestinian civilian savaging, plus the many hundreds of thousands slaughtered 25,000 miles around by World Murder Incorporated, still soon roar humanity its last 90 seconds to nuclear doomsday midnight. Only you can save us. Big Mouth here told you just how. Remove the perps' wrongs they call rights. Stop bribery of leaders to spend our trillions on weaponeers' shit. End delivery, indeed manufacture, of arsenals fueling 50 wars a year. Enforce now trashed 185 nations signed and ratified treaty laws to work for world nuclear and conventional disarmament. Prevent the launching of hundreds more world invasions against every constitution allowing only people's legislator majority declaration of wars. Never leaders' attacks without our permission. Specifically thus, you will win law that ends forever bestial or just apathetic, unlawful consent to explode any more industrial strength genocide that murdered 300 million, ruining billions, 95% civilian non-combatants for the last 110 years, against many hundreds of international and national war crime laws forbidding one single battle explosive anywhere near unarmed people not wearing fatigues. Failure to progress with your rescue laws will boom the 9,000 hydrogen bombs due to explode in everybody's picture window 7 to 30 minutes after 17,000 miles an hour launch. Definitely without your legal congressional authorization. All these hellfire wrongs the power players call rights. Why? Because you and I, till we end 'em, allow 'em. Why did, do, and to the fast end will they keep building and exploding this evil machine? For your money, their power, and everyone's hate who endorses theirs. Liars call it all our national security. My 100 rants say all war is our abuse and suffering pending human extinction. I might not be the first peace law freak, but my every predecessor 100% failed. On a scale of 1 to 100, rate their MIA enforcement schemes minus 93,000. For example, the most famous nuclear disarmament proposal from the post-World War II era called for condign punishment of unauthorized nuclear bomb-holding nations. Translation: world bosses with a central remaining nuke stash would drop their H-bombs on your guilty city populations. The other actual anti-war crime laws provided effectively zero enforcement. Yes, punishing illegal weapon owners by killing them with your weapons, called legal for such a noble purpose, is the Funk and Wagnall's definition of ridiculous. So peace enforcement without violence ideas? 10,000 war problem eggheads had none. Besides, better universities' humanity programs will sweeten the bad boys in a century or two. And keep 100% of your arsenals and armies. Just pretty please don't use them. Never mind that for 10,000 years, everyone always has. My demand that you organize a 150-nation embargo of weaponeer invaders is not pie in the sky. A number of bad national actors have straightened up to a degree from widespread, deliberate, multinational economic pressure. Can you find a single one of my speeches that does not demand your every law that stops making and keeps destroying weapons and directs giant armies without their kill toys to be sent home to their families? Unless given real, honest benefactors, not malicious liars, life-saving work they'd be damned good at with the right, definitely non-lethal tools. Firefighting, water finding, farm rescue, medical intervention, and truly peacekeeping jobs. Weapons needed until world supply is a tiny fraction of current guns, bombs, and missiles to the moon. You've endured my 45 hours, so here's 5 seconds more. War is weapons. Peace ain't. Take care of it. Many peace laws have been world and nationally chosen and passed, none worth the paper they're written on because nobody thought, much less arranged, how to enforce them. Force the end of force? A difficult, confusing, contradictory proposition. War is 1 billion times more straightforward, not to mention man's most successful, if evil, bestial enterprise. Hate, steal, kill, profit, empower. Gets you everything you want, and it's tons of fun. For corrupted, confused assholes, that is. My obsession has been write far stronger, more comprehensive war-ending laws, each being nothing until full compliance is fully coerced. My anti-government bribery rules are meant to make all those war industry paid pawns and thieves public servants again. Until our leaders are clean, though, my every other demanded peace law doesn't exist until I win a vast number of disarmament lawsuits with a myriad expert professional helpers, mostly pros prepared to boom all necessary laws, politics, and technology. But 71-year-old Stevie Crank is gonna save the world himself. You're laughing so hard you wet your pants. I might someday be a tiny little something, but never before somebody multiplies to do our God of Love's job that he ain't almighty able to do himself alone. Exactly why he designed our big brains, strong hands, loud mouths, and giant loving hearts to help ourselves overcome every mortal danger and human failing that he can't surmount without his greatest but quite vulnerable, corruptible creation's best organized self and social help. But how? Dear God, how? Just do 5% against public dangers, what you around the clock do to protect your one little family. How else are you going to make the big shots stop killing you and start helping you? And recruit 1 billion little folks to truly take over? That's right. God, me, and everybody needs somebody's help fast. Now. As Yogi Berra said after the Phillies slammed his Yanks with 8 runs in the second inning, "It's getting late early." Somebody help? Well, who dat? You know who.